U.S. Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona is joining us right now on the KTAR Newsmaker line. Good morning, Senator.
Good morning. How are you?
Doing good. Thank you.
We're doing good. So yesterday, you questioned Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, CIA Director John Ratcliffe about this Signal app chat in which administration officials allegedly discussed attack plans in Yemen and that the editor of The Atlantic was invited into. Now, we just saw a press release from your office. You are now calling for the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth's resignation over this?
Oh, absolutely. 2 months ago, when we went through his confirmation hearing, I made it very clear to my colleagues that this guy was unqualified for this job. When you read through the Hegseth portion of that Signal chain, and you see that he put on an unsecured app with a random person, pre-decisional, but also then just operational information about a strike that was about to commence. This is the most sensitive information any government has. The element of surprise in a combat action is everything. I'll tell you, when I flew in combat over the first Gulf War, I had a missile blow up next to my airplane, and I survived that. If they would have known I was coming ahead of time, I very likely would have been shot down. And if this information was released, and by the way, somebody on the Signal chain was over in Moscow at the time. If the Russians got this information and it went to the Iranians and then to the Houthis, those pilots who launched off of that aircraft carrier about 2 hours after that comment in the Signal chain, the risk to them would have gone up significantly. This is the ultimate highest level of incompetence I've seen in operational security from a high-level official ever.
Now, so interestingly, this is not the first time that the use of this app, this Signal app, has happened by a government official. It did happen back in 2021 under President Biden. The director of the Defense Department's digital service was found to have violated policy by using Signal. What has to happen to get...
Well, first of all, where people are allowed to use Signal, I use Signal. We use it to say, hey, we're going to have a meeting. Or remember the thing we were talking about the other day. Let's go to the SCIF and talk about that again. You know, a secure facility. You don't share classified information over Signal.
Right.
It is vulnerable to hacking.
Right. In this case, it was the director of the Defense Department's digital service that shared DOD info on there. That's why he kind of got his hand slapped. So do we need to move to something like fining officials so that people get the message
Well,
you cannot do this?
The message is you fire them. If a junior officer or senior officer in the military, or by the way, a general or admiral did what Hegseth just did, Hegseth would fire him, without a doubt.
So others need to be fired? Tulsi Gabbard, John Ratcliffe?
I'm going to go back and look through her testimony because I was asking her and the CIA director very pointed questions about what was in this Signal chain, and there were long pauses. The wheels were turning. Okay, what can I say? I don't want to perjure myself here in front of the United States Senate Intelligence Committee. What can I get away with without sharing the information? So we're going to go and take a very close look at the transcript and see if they were being untruthful. My suspicion is I'm not going to like what I read here. We need an OD&I, a Director of National Intelligence, and a CIA director that is always going to be straightforward with the Senate Intelligence Committee. And it does not appear that happened yesterday.
Senator, moving on to a kind of a different topic here. We know that you disagree with a lot of what President Trump is up to. As the saying goes, though, a stopped clock can be right twice a day. So in light of criticism you've had on how former President Biden handled border matters, do you think that the Trump administration is getting some things right at the border, or maybe mostly right at the border?
Yes. So the numbers are down, and the numbers were coming down under Biden after he made some changes. And I've asked for changes during the last administration and was critical. I will give credit where credit's due, right? The numbers are coming down. At the same time, ICE raids on schools, intimidation of large groups of people, threatening to send people and lock them up on Guantanamo Bay, building facilities, moving people in military airplanes, even though it costs a lot more. Those things don't make sense to me.
So what
makes
things do
is
make sense? Yeah.
Well, having stronger border security, giving the Border Patrol the resources they need. I would like to see legislation where we could raise Border Patrol pay, hire more Border Patrol agents, do what the Border Patrol would like in the way of barriers and fences and a wall at the southern border, not spend a ton of money, which it looks like this president is planning on doing, to build barriers in places where the Border Patrol doesn't need them. So I want to do stuff that makes sense. More fentanyl detection machines. We could have had those machines at the border already, allowing us to detect and stop fentanyl from coming into this country. But the president, before he was sworn in, blocked that legislation to do that. So, yes, there are things that are happening that are bringing the numbers down. At the same time, what we need is bipartisan legislation on border security, but also on immigration reform, and threatening mass deportations. It's not who we are as a country. I mean, ripping communities apart. We should be focused on criminals, deporting criminals, gang members, terrorists or suspected terrorists, finding these people, arresting these people, removing these people. Going into a school and intimidating little kids, I just don't think that's who we are as a country.
Let's talk about federal funding, because there have been funding cuts. They may or may not end up being permanent. What are the funding cuts that concern you the most? And we've heard you say many times that there is waste in the government that needs to be addressed. What would you like to see cut?
Well, when we have redundancy in programs, and when there are programs that aren't run efficiently. So the way I think this should be done is, and this should be a continuous improvement of the federal government, from administration to administration, cabinet members should be given the power to review their organizations, to figure out where there's redundancy, to figure out where people aren't doing their jobs, and get rid of those folks. An unelected billionaire just randomly firing valuable people, folks at the National Institute for Health, the CDC. These are organizations that are keeping us healthy and safe. They're firing scientists. Donald Trump talks about he wants to cure childhood cancer, and then he cuts funding for childhood cancer and research. And he's getting rid of the researchers that do this valuable work with no analysis, no plan. That's not the way we should be running a government.
You mentioned
that is putting us more at risk. So, and by the way, find the fraud. And I'd like to see, if there's fraud, that means people were committing crimes. I'd like to see the indictments. Haven't seen one yet. What I have seen is veterans, thousands of veterans, even after getting good performance reports, being fired for poor performance. I had some of them in my office. These guys, their lives, and women, their lives have been ruined by Elon Musk for no reason.
And speaking of Elon Musk, as we talk with Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona, tell us about trading in your Tesla. Are you now actually driving a gas-powered SUV?
Yeah, I have the same car that I have in Tucson. I drive about 2,000 miles a year here in Washington. But by the way, the guy called me a traitor. So he calls me a traitor. I'm not going to drive the car designed and built by a guy who refers to me as a traitor for doing my job.
Well,
so,
I tell you,
yeah, I got rid of his car.
Fair enough.
Well, welcome to the dark side of internal combustion. We have cookies.
Hey, my wife Gabby, she's got a Chevy Corvair, 1963.
Wow.
She's a car person. I've been a car person. We don't drive all that much anywhere, actually. A little bit in Arizona. I often fly myself around in a little airplane just for
fun,
saving some time to get around the state. Yeah. Here, I barely drive at all. I live 3 miles from the Capitol. I just drive back and forth. But the Tesla had run its course with me, and it is no more. So I had to get rid of it.
All right. Thank you so much for your time this morning. That is U.S. Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona.
Thanks for watching Arizona's Morning News. Click to watch more from KTAR News and hit the button in the middle to subscribe.